Hello and welcome to another edition of the Diversified Semantic Layer podcast. This is Eric Vallow, and I'm joined by my pals Josh Fletcher, Dallas Marks, Greg Myers, Jamie Oswald. Hey guys.
Hey. Hello. Hello.
Strangely absent is Mr. Clint Bosloo. We're assuming that he's given up on ever having decent internet access and is just throwing his computer into the ocean wherever he is. So it's been a long time, guys. What's up? Come on. This is where you talk.
Nothing. I don't know. I'm getting a new furnace today. I'm very excited to pay for that.
Excited. I'm moving.
Yeah.
That's the boxes. I don't think that's what people want to talk about, though. Let's talk city. So let's just cut right to the chase. Then, small talk aside, we're going to talk about the Run Simple message coming out of SAP last week. We've all had a little bit of time to stew on it, and it's the blog from blogs.sap.com titled "Run Simple Convergence of the SAP BusinessObjects BI Product Portfolio." So let's open it up with initial impressions before we start peeling this thing apart. Long overdue, what we always wanted.
Well, I think really, the writing on the wall has been there for a lot of this stuff for a while. Specifically so to me there were really two big announcements, right? So the dashboards will merge into Design Studio, which was announced last year, and Lumira will absorb Explorer, right? Which is also not a terrific surprise. It's nice to have it written down, but in terms of like meaty product direction, I don't know that this stuff really qualifies. Is that other people's impressions too?
I think the message more is interoperability, right? Or is it, well, maybe it's both.
To some extent, I think they were starting to very cautiously, very slowly warm people up to the fact that the BI platform as we know it is going away eventually, but they were very, cautious and very tentative as to how they said that. It was very self-effacing, where they kept saying, we respect your investment, we respect your time that you put into it, and all your your money and effort, and we're not going to expire your content, but we're moving forward in this other direction. So I think it's just the part of a very long campaign we're going to see to start getting people used to the fact that things are going away.
So on that, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so I found it interesting that SAP HANA was not mentioned in any of the articles, right? But
it's assumed.
But what you took out of it is that SAP HANA is the real story here, in that to keep up, that's a platform you've got to be on.
I think it was clear to me anyway that that's the way they're going forward. So I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take years and years, but still, it's just this is the first time they've actually put it down that things there's change on the wind.
One of the questions I had reading that blog post was there was a lot of talk about and I made reference to if you're licensed for dashboards today, you're licensed for Design Studio, which I think is a great move, and what they don't want to do by this exercise, and I think it's going to be quite a significant change to the platform and the client tools, is alienate customers who don't have a mechanism to move without a significant license investment. And what they don't want to do is create an opportunity for customers to evaluate all the products in the market, because they're going to have to spend money no matter which way they go. And so that was one of the things I saw, especially around Explorer and Lumira. As yet, I'm not convinced that the Lumira cloud capability is going to give me exactly what I get in Explorer today. Explorer today, and I'm sure Jamie will attest, users love that, and I don't think it's going to cover it if we just provide Lumira on the desktop, right? There needs to be a server-based environment where users can go and get data without having to actually build the data themselves. And I just want to explore a data set you provide, and Explorer does that. How do we migrate to Lumira if that's the roadmap? If the licensing means we need to invest in to replicate the Explorer functionality today, we need to actually invest in Lumira Server, we need to invest in HANA, and Lumira named licenses, right? That's going to be a really big stumbling block for a lot of customers to surmount.
You already hit on a bunch of things that aren't immediately clear in this messaging that I'm sure will come out in the wash, right? So licensing big one. What does that conversion look like? What does the trade-in look like? Is it a 1-for-1 or is it, of course, an upsell? And two, I think another important part is continued parity between Lumira on the desktop and Lumira on the server, because clearly there's two different things happening there, right? And from a capability standpoint, there's certainly overlap, but like you said, to replace Explorer, to say, you know what, we're going to put the facet type view into Lumira. Well, where does that investment go first? In the Tableau killer, or does it go into the Explorer killer? One of those things will come on the wash, I guess. Eh?
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think that licensing question is pretty interesting too, right? Because we've already paid for either named user licenses or CPU licenses or concurrent session-based licenses for business objects, right? And so then we've got to, if we're going to use HANA as the platform, at least the way it's licensed now, we've really just got to pay a crap ton extra, right? So it's not because you've got to buy the hardware, you've got to buy the HANA licenses separately. You're not, you're buying the platform and then you're also paying to access the platform, and that I think will be the toughest pill for business objects users to swallow if that really is the way forward.
I think what they did, and maybe someone here knows better than me, but I think what they did is for ERP licensing, right? When they first announced HANA, it was basically you just buy it as a standalone database, and there was no kind of how do I buy it with ERP or BW, and quite a significant investment to just buy HANA outright. And then with the ERP licensing, what they did is they said, well, hang on now, ERP runs on HANA, and today when you buy ERP, you pay 10% or 12% to buy SQL Server or Oracle along with your ERP instance to run it on there. And I think what they changed the licensing model to do is then to allow you to buy HANA as one of the database options that came with ERP, and it was a limited database version that basically ran underneath ERP only. And I think that's the same with you when you buy BW today. And so if they start to extend that and the BOE platform moves into that same kind of way where, if you already licensed for Crystal Reports and Lumira and so on, and you just want to run your BOE platform on HANA, then as a customer, I would want to expect that our maintenance dollars that we're paying is going in towards that transition, so I can just run it on the HANA platform as just another kind of database option or the next version of the BOE platform. Is what I'd expect. I'm not kind of confident that that's what's going to happen for business object customers.
Well, there was sort of an indication of that in the blog post, right, where they were talking about how they now are just going to have this BI platform license, and if you have that license, you're licensed for all of the tools now instead of them all being separate, and you can take your existing licenses and trade them in 1-for-1 for this new platform license. So instead of having to buy Webby and Crystal or whatever, you can change it in and get the one. And I think that's definitely one of the good signs of Jane Landry's leadership now, because I know in her previous role that was part of what she was working on, was those bundles of licenses to make it easier to adopt and make it easier to have access to all those right tools. So I was pretty encouraged by seeing that, because the way they used to do it was pretty confusing.
Yeah, it's sorry, Eric, go on.
I was just going to say, I guess I'm a little fuzzy on that, right? Especially as we talk about the stuff we own today, whether I have a disparate Crystal license or Crystal Server or whatever the case might be. As that convergence starts to happen, are we talking brand new tools to replace these? Are we talking about just a tighter integration as the road moves along?
Yeah, I having worked for a consulting organization that sold business object software for a while, I got reasonably familiar with how they did it, and at a kind of enterprise level, you basically had either named user licensing, and they try to switch everyone off that to like a CPU-based license model or a concurrent-based. So you either license on a pool of users or you license on hardware restrictions. So for instance, where I'm working now, we have an enterprise premium license, which basically gives us the platform and Webby and Crystal and dashboards, and you have like a couple of different roles within that, but it's really basically limited by the hardware that you can run on. You can run on 8 cores. And then on top of that, we buy Explorer. So, you know, as that and that kind of licensing model, I'd expect other things that are replacing Explorer to fit into that model. And if the platform itself transitions from a kind of Windows-based Corba architecture onto a HANA architecture, then I'd want that to be part of, you know, the transition of the platform too. I mean, from a concurrent-based model, you know, if you just say I want everything, then you should be able to get everything. The problem the way that it works with SAP though is that if you're on a licensing agreement, you're on a licensing agreement at a point in time, and you can continue to expand that licensing, or you know, expand your licenses on that current model. If you want to move to the latest one, then you pretty much effectively always have to make an investment of some kind to get to the latest licensing model, some kind of a transaction to get to that point.
Yeah, and you can't go back either, right? I mean, I think that's one thing that makes people extra cautious, right? Because you don't get very good numbers and benchmarks about, okay, well, I'm using this many CPUs, how many concurrent licenses do I really need, right? Stuff like that. I know that's something that a lot of customers are struggling with. Are, you know, am I hamstringing myself in the future, especially with this pain as a butt in to use the activity universe it is, right? So.
Let's change gears a little bit, and this might be somewhat contentious, and I'm eager to hear your opinions. I actually have issues with the longevity of tools that are moving towards obsolescence. Let's take Desky as the example. Let's assume Explorer is going to be the next one. Is it the best investment on SAP's part for customers for Desky to live on in the way that it does? Because it's clearly no longer an enterprise solution. And I think the customers that I meet still want it to be that have it, right? They want it to be a part of their hooked-in schedules. They don't want it to live on users' desktops. We don't know what Explorer is going to look like in the future. We don't know how that's going to be managed from a, air quotes, deprecated tool perspective. What are your guys' thoughts on things like that living into perpetuity?
You made an excellent point, because you are right. If you're really into desktop intelligence, the compatibility pack as it stands is it's not a full solution. And so is Jane articulating that it should be a full solution? I mean, are they going to bring back the server components of Desky back to the BI platform? Is that what she's implying? I thought it was very interesting, you know, because we heard some of this at last month's Sapphire conference, that, you know, we apologize for taking Desky away from you, and we now realize that was a mistake, and that's really a new message from them, and I mean, thank you for listening. I think what I hear a lot in Jane's blog is, you know, some sense that, you know, hey, we're actually listening to our customers. But I don't think the fault was in retiring Desky. Where I think the fault is just how slow they were to replace its functionality. And I don't know. I have no qualms about Desky being retired, but you know, it certainly took longer than customers wanted for the feature gap to be closed.
Well, and it's interesting that feature gap, well, not necessarily the quality of the features, but the number of features is so small that it's still a deal breaker for so many customers. Am I crazy?
But what are people still using it for? I mean, the last thing that you can't do is VBA script, and who's running applications that are built on a Desky report that has, it's an application platform for VB script. I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's still a few others though, right?
Freehand SQL.
Yeah, for SQL, custom grouping variables. I don't even remember.
I think
No,
custom grouping got added to Webby, one of the later versions, but you've
That's
also
right.
got
It's at least in Crystal, I know.
People are yelling at
user-based objects. That was
That-
really
But
handy.
isn't there another way to get at those things? I mean, you're talking about. It's like think of like someone trying to heat their house with a wood burning stove. You still got to cut wood all year long. You got to chop it, season it, then you got to put it in the stove. I mean, yeah, you can heat your house other ways, but it may not be the exact same way you used to do it. But it's probably a lot more efficient with today's tools and technology. I have to think there's a solution another way around.
Let's hope so. I'm paying for a new furnace today.
That's what made me think of the analogy.
We don't want to change.
Well, but I think that's really what it comes down to, right? So Dallas hit the feature gap, right? So there was no clear path there was no easy way to move straight from Desky to Webby when we first started this journey. But I think if all of the features are there and customers are given an easy way, and not only is the technology part there, but they're shown the business solution. What's the value for me to move to this newer technology? How can I do it faster, better, smarter? It becomes a no-brainer. They were just sort of said, well, we're in Desky, and you have to go to Webby, and if your features aren't there, tough. But we're cutting it off at a certain date, and I just don't think that's the right approach. It has to be done the whole circle.
I kind of feel too that if feature gaps are closed, if you address those, nip those in the bud, it just, and I've never run a multi-bajillion-dollar software company before, but it seems to me like it would be less pain to come up with a conversion mechanism than to support those tools into perpetuity, or for some unnamed date in the future. I don't know.
I think Dallas and Greg have already spoken about the problem has been that the conversion tool still didn't address, we still have feature gaps, and it was so drawn out, like you were able to start using Webby in 6.x and XIR1 and XIR2 and 3.1 and it's still there in 4, right? Like they brought it back in 4.1. So there was such a long, drawn-out conversion process, and to start with, there was just no parity between Webby and Desky. They just wanted to get everyone onto a thin client, or like a web-based client, and get everyone off Desky. But customers had to choose when to make that investment, and it was a massive investment to switch. You had to convert all your reports, and then like 50% of them didn't convert probably, and you had to either rebuild them, and then you had, I think what we're seeing is the stalwarts who use VBA code and use freehand SQL, and that's all they use, and they maybe use external scheduling capability, and they just can't transition. There's still not a way to do that, and they've got so much investment, and switching is as pricey as switching BI tools. So they just stay on an older version. I think that was the issue, less than a conversion conversion wizard.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking more. I'm just talking put the past behind us, right? If this email or this blog is clearly pointed at how SAP will live on in the future, and I'm talking about it, as you close those gaps, why support Desky beyond that? I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, so when we say support, like I think it's at the point now where you're never going to make people happy if you say you just absolutely cannot use it, right? It'll sit there. We're not going to do anything with it. We're not going to touch it. You've got what you've got. If you don't like the way something works in 6 months, suck it. I mean, this is where we're leaving you. If you want anything new, you've got to get on the new tools. And I think that that's not a bad way to do it. I mean, I hate Desky as much as the next guy, probably more. But I don't think it's worth making people. I mean, you're never going to drag them along, right? I mean, if the new features in BI 4.1 aren't enough to get somebody to want to get off of, their BO6 infrastructure, then I mean, there are just people like that out there, and you're never going to convince them.
I no offense, I think that's overly simplistic, because I think the customers that are still hanging on to it, it's either I have too much stuff to even look at. I don't have time to look at what the conversion tool does, or I have too much. I don't even know where to start. And and to me, if it's ever going to go away, it's got to get to a point where the platform sees that I'm trying to open a Desky report and says, hey, well, let's go ahead and flip this over to Webby for you and nib it in the bud. All right, again, keep saying that.
Yeah, but I think that most of the people that are still out there, though, aren't doing the stuff that the converters work for. Right? I mean, it's not, and those people aren't going to upgrade their platform to the point where it automatically figures out. You know what I mean? Like, they'd have to go to some super new version of the platform in order for it to know, hey, this is a Desky, let me convert it to a Webby, whatever. They're not going to do that. Are most people dragging Desky along up through all this stuff? I don't know. Do you guys know?
I guess one of the things I see as a challenge for SAP, trying to look at it from their perspective is something like Desky, right? Like, it's one thing to make a statement saying, oh, we're never going to retire your content, but how much do you restrict yourself as an organization in terms of maintaining and trying to develop and innovate more agile, which is what they're trying to do? How do you balance that with not retiring content? Because something like Desky, if the new version of the platform is running on HANA, then how do they get that running? How do they get Desky running on HANA, right? And then you take something like Explorer, it's Flash-based. How do they get that running in the HANA web application in XS? And then if they want to do another major innovation in 5 years' time, how do they take Desky and Explorer content and move it up to that? I'm also worried that they're handcuffing themselves a bit by kind of putting that statement out there that we're just never going to retire your content. Surely there has to be a way for you to move that forward without locking yourself into an older architecture.
Don't move it forward. You should open source Desky and Explorer. Right? No, but seriously, I think didn't the blog also sort of indicate that the Explorer and dashboards are going the way of Desky? I mean, that was really sort of an indication of the same thing. They're going to merge it into, but those, it's kind of the end of those as well. So it's not just Desky now. We're going to start seeing, I think, a little more malcontent as this moves forward. But
well, yeah, I mean, dashboards around Desky. I think this conversation around Desky has really been a metaphor for everything, right? Everything in this this directional blog is what we're talking about here. Jamie disagrees.
Yeah, I'm just frowning at you making it all about Desky yet again.
No, I mean, that was just
I was going to make
we gravitated towards what we knew, right? And we're talking about not repeating the sins of their past, like we have any control.
I was going to make a comment about Excelsius actually in dashboards because we're quite a heavy dashboards user and continue to invest in that. We're running 4.0. Design Studio doesn't work with universes yet. It's going to be 6 to 12 months before we patch up, and there's still quite a reasonable feature gap between Design Studio and Excelsius. We couldn't look at moving anytime soon. We can't connect to web services to feed our data sets. How do we make our dashboards near real time if we can't hook them up to web services, and if we're having to build multiple universe queries for every single bit of data element we want? There's still quite a gap there. A lot of the connectivity options out of there in dashboards that made dashboards such a flexible tool just doesn't exist in Design Studio.
So I totally want to bait you on this. Hold on one second. So with that being said, the blog specifically says Design Studio is 70% complete in terms of supporting BusinessObjects dashboard use cases. So we're not talking about a feature parity. We're talking about how customers most commonly use the tool. Is that a fair shake?
Yeah. But I mean, you still see. What I'm pointing out is that they're going to have another situation when it comes to Excelsius and getting those customers onto Design Studio if they don't learn from the history from Desky, which I think they're saying, listen, we see we did some stuff wrong and we want to make that better, blah blah blah. But there's still they put that statement out there for a while. Still, some of the kind of key things that customers are using, and pretty much all the dashboard projects I did, we fed Excelsius via web services because the Universe Query Builder was terrible and is still terrible and doesn't give you any kind of flexibility that a web service does. So every project I did with dashboards for every customer was web service driven. so 70%, yeah, but like as a consultant, every project I did was web services. So there's still a big gap there for me if I was consulting with dashboard development.
Jamie, did I see you shaking your head down again?
Well, yeah. So think about how much better Design Studio would be if they had said 3 years ago, look, we're not putting another dime into Excelsius. We know you guys want to put this content on mobile. Tough. Instead of figuring out how to make half of the components HTML5 compliant, we're going to really sit down and start making Design Studio replace it instead of having one foot in both camps, right? It just makes me very sad. I still don't think Design Studio is easy enough, although I do need to go watch Ahmed's webinar replay, but I think it's not quite there like Excelsius is there. But if they had been investing whole hog in it for the last 3 years instead of also trying to keep the Excelsius believers happy, I think it'd be much better off.
And
now that said,
yeah.
I don't trust SAP to understand most customers' use cases because when you talk to them about dashboards at least 3 or 4 years ago, it was like, well, this doesn't really handle complicated stuff. And when they found out that you had Excelsius dashboards with more than 6 connections, they were blown away, right? And in my experience, that's every dashboard that any customer has ever deployed. So
I wanted to touch on another part of the blog post that I think we're kind of touching on here, which was the interoperability statement. And I saw a blog recently by I forget who, and it made a fantastic point that one of the key things that the platform still doesn't deliver on is consistency between tools. And I think that is such a big area that they need to work on because, a lot of us are consultants or we're consultants, and one of the biggest things was that when you deploy business objects for a customer and they want to start learning it, every tool has a massive learning curve and they all work differently and they all connect differently. And if you use Explorer, and I know it's fixed now, but you could only use UNX, not UNV, which is still an issue for us because we're on 4.0. And if you use LiveOffice, you can only use UNV and not UNX. And then there's just so much inconsistency between their visualizations, which they're fixing with CVOM, but also how things work and how you actually get data access and stuff. And that is such a bugbear for customers because it's so hard to go from knowing nothing about the platform to actually being proficient in all the tools as a internal organization or internal team of developers in business objects.
Part of me is afraid that we're just not ever going to see that, though, out of the platform. I mean, as things are moving forward and into the new space, I just don't see them spending the effort, time, and money into making that convergence between these, let's be honest, legacy tools, right? They've been around for years and years, and I just don't know that you can ever get them to the point where there's gonna be that, seamless parity across them all. That's the new stuff.
What's really interesting to me though is we're seeing that, and when they talk about interoperability in that post, they talk about Lumira and exporting something into dashboards. That's great. But what they've said around enterprise reporting, which is everyone's bread and butter and will never go away, they're saying we're going to leave Webby and Crystal there because we know there's too much investment. What I would like to see them address is, well, how do we do the next generation of enterprise reporting? Because while it might not be sexy, and it might not be addressing some of the gaps in their platform compared to competitors, that's what's going to sell it for customers is if they can take customers on the next journey of enterprise reporting alongside dashboarding and self-service data discovery on the desktop, right? Without addressing enterprise reporting, you're always going to be a subpar portfolio, in my opinion. Big statement.
Yeah, I think they're really far out ahead on enterprise reporting, though. I think that they can concentrate on some other stuff for a while and still be pretty decently far ahead of the game.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you just a footprint of both Webby and Crystal reports. I mean, yeah.
I mean, that said, I do agree that they do need to interoperate a lot better, but I mean, I don't think anybody's going to beat Webby or Crystal anytime soon.
I agree. I think I guess I'm less concerned about that, and just maybe not just within the tools themselves as they work on this convergence, but even to the HANA platform as it continues to evolve. Things that this doesn't address that I know we've talked about on this show before are also things like the universe. Where is it going? Or semantic layers in general, excuse me, not just the universe. Where are they going and how do they fit within this roadmap? And then, because that could really be the glue that helps make this stick, interoperability, whether you're running on HANA or you're running on some classic BusinessObjects platform, which, by the way, is anybody else shocked the BusinessObjects name still is in here? It's just another thing that hasn't been addressed that I think would help us understand how things will work across all these platforms. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
You touched on something at the very beginning, and that was that the word HANA does not appear ever in Jane's blog post, but yet, when you tell a customer, hey, we're now including Lumira and Lumira Server as part of your BI platform, that sounds like a plus, but isn't HANA still the large portion of the iceberg that's below the surface of the water there?
Yeah. Well, as I understand it, and I'm no licensing expert, but I thought Lumira Server has a runtime version license of HANA. It's so just how you're actually going to report on data in Lumira is the big variable that's not really addressed.
Well, I don't think Lumira Server comes with a runtime license of HANA. Can you buy it standalone like that?
Okay, we're not the authority. I could have swore that was one of the things we learned at Sapphire.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you didn't go.
Yeah.
I still have a question about what they're going to do with LiveOffice, because that blog post still kind of says, oh, it looks like it'll get rolled into Analysis Office, but then I've seen other stuff that's saying no, it won't, and that is for me one of the the standout problems that SAP have is there's the idea place thing. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different customers voting on, give us UNX support for LiveOffice. I mean, just chuck one developer on it and just do it and release it, and it's still outstanding. And it's such a bugbear for so many people, including us. We're rolling out 4.0. We just upgraded to it. Everyone's really excited. LiveOffice. Oh, but you got to use Webby, because if you try and connect to a universe, all our universe is UNX. Sorry, it's so frustrating. Please, SAP, fix it.
That was actually articulated as two parts, I guess. They had floated the trial balloon earlier in the year that they wanted to get down to one Office plugin that did everything, and I guess in taking a look at that, it's easier in the short term, and again, nobody really knows when the short term is. It's in the short term we will see a LiveOffice with UNX support. But then eventually, longer term, they do want to get to that one single plugin. So, we'll see analysis functionality, and LiveOffice functionality together. And it's not really even analysis functionality, because, they're trying to collapse, analysis into Lumira. So what will that look like?
Well, I think from a last word perspective, I feel like, are you guys with me that maybe this gives us a few nuggets, but I'd still like to learn more. This is only part of the story.
Yep.
It expresses intention, which is great. All right, let's talk about how. We're dying. All right.
Well, I mean, I do think that the big thing is at least they have formally come out and said, look, here's what our stack, at least in terms of what tools will be there in 4 years, right? So as I'm a customer, as I'm making decisions about, well, do I increase my efforts in Explore now? Probably not if Lumira Server is an option for me. I mean, I think that it's good to know that stuff as early as you can, right? Because we all make 100 decisions today about what to invest in. So having as much information there is always helpful.
Do you really think, though, even especially you as a customer, do you think if you had Explorer and it solved a big business problem you had today and it was going to cost you 6 months of effort to get to the finish line, you wouldn't use it?
Well, I think it depends, right? I mean, I think it depends on what. If it's still the right solution, it's still the right solution. But I think that having this information as a factor into determining whether it's the right solution is helpful. I mean, if I have Lumira Server but I haven't really figured it out, and I can choose to spend the next 6 months creating stuff in Explorer or the next 2 months trying to figure out Lumira and extending my project deadline by 2 months, that's not horrific necessarily, right? If I'm future-proofing my solution. But it depends. I mean, none of this stuff's easy.
Right. Okay. Let's put a bow on it, gents. It's good speaking to you again. We probably need to revisit this very blog in another 12 months and see where we stand on it. Yeah. All right.
Definitely.
Well, it's been fun, fellas. Have a good rest of your day. Okay.
Thanks.
This podcast is hosted and sponsored by EV Technologies. Visit us on the net at SaveTheCMS.com.